I'm going to start the tutorials off with pants or shorts, because that is what really differentiates Lolita Boystyle from Lolita, because you're not wearing a skirt, you're wearing pants. So a quick recap from last week's video in case you didn't watch it. The shorter and puffier the pants, the cuter the look. And if you want to go for a more elegant and princely look, I suggest a bit longer and a bit narrower pants, but they should still have some puffiness to them. Unless it's shorter than your knee, then they can be just straight. But the shorter and the puffier, the cuter the pants. And I decided to go for quite sleek pants from the top, and I gave the puffiness to the knees, and these end under the knee because I carry my knee obsession over from Lolita. I think I'll make shorter pants as well at some point, but I decided to start with these. For this project you're only gonna need your fabric and elastic for the waistband, and I got my fabric from the aisle that had all kinds of fabrics for men's suits. So you want something that possibly has a bit of elastic to it or stretch to it, and quite thick but still soft, so that when you shear it or pleat it, it's gonna look nice. So something a bit thicker but still soft. And again, black is the most common color in kodona, ouji, boystyle, you name it. But I used this kind of pinstripe-y, brownish. The stripe is very mild effect, and you're gonna see some fabric close-ups later. So you're gonna need those. And if you want, you can also use this tutorial to make bloomers, because they are quite similar to the pants we are making today. So if you want, you can use this for that one. And bloomers are usually made from cotton or cotton blends, but because it's not meant to be shown, it doesn't really matter what kind of fabric you use. Just make or keep in mind if you want them to be warm for winter, or if you want them to be quite cool for summer, in case you bend over and you don't want to show anything that's under the skirt. So, but those are the materials you're going to need. And as for measurements, I'm going to zoom my head out, which will look weird, but you're gonna see what I mean better. I'm gonna show you the full pattern in a bit, but first I'm gonna talk about what measurements you're going to need. And the most important one is your widest part of your lower body. Mine is my hips and my ass, but it can be your waist or anything. It depends on what your body shape is. And my hips are 96 centimeters wide. So I made my pants to be 100 centimeters, so that they are quite snug on the top. And after you have your width, you want to decide how high you want the pants to sit. So you want to take and measure from your crotch to all the way to the top to decide what kind of length you want. And after you've decided your width, you need to measure how wide you need the cuff of the pants to be. For example, mine are under the knee, and if you have it here or in the middle of your calf, you need to measure your ankle, because it has to go over your ankle, and then where you want the pants to end, and whichever is the bigger measurement, you want to take that and make it, because it would suck to make pants that look good, but you can't put them on because you can't get it over your ankle. So one thing that you can do if you want it to be really snug here is to put some elastic to the back side of the cuff and have the front sewn on, or you can do the whole cuff with elastic, but that will look a bit less polished. So if you're going for ouji, I recommend that at least half of the cuff is just sewn on and not elastic. But if you're making bloomers, it can be elastic. As for the length of the pants, you want to measure them from the inseam, which is the crotch, and decide how long you want your pants to be. And if you're like me and want to make them go over your knee, you want to leave a bit of room so that you can bend your knee. But other than that, you want to measure how long you want your pants to be from the inseam. I made my pants from 2 different pieces, and I don't know if you can see it well, but I made my front piece a bit smaller than my back piece so that my seams go from here, so that next time when I make these pants I want to add pockets. So I wanted to try out how the seams would go, and it's nicer to have the pockets here than if the seam would be right in the middle. But you of course don't have to. If you want, you can make the pants from 2 identical pieces, but I made mine so that the seam is a bit on the front instead of the side. And here are my measurements. So as you can see, I added 4 centimeters to the whole width of the pants so that they fit quite snugly. If you want them to be really loose, I recommend adding 15 or 20 centimeters so that you really have that extra fabric to give the puffiness. And here is my inseam. I added a bit of extra because if you're not sure how long you want your pants to be, it's always better to have a bit of extra that you can cut away, and it's a lot harder to add length without it looking like you just needed to add length. As for the top, I want it to be 30 centimeters so that it comes quite close to my belly button, but not quite. And the cuff is 33 centimeters, which is the bottom of the pants. So, like I said, I made my front piece to be a bit smaller than my back piece. But the basic thing is to take your hip or waist, your largest measurement, and divide it in 2. I made mine a bit uneven, and you want to add a bit of extra for the elastic tunnel. And here are my top, my inseam, and my cuff. And remember to leave seam allowance. And aside from this, you will also need the fabric for the cuff, and that is going to be your width of the cuff with a couple centimeters extra for seam allowance by the length of the cuff. It's gonna be quite a small piece, and you may want to try around what kind of cuff you want to be, so I didn't make a pattern for the cuff, but it's easy to use some kind of scrap pieces for that one. But I'll put this as a photo in the description, and if you have any questions regarding the pattern, don't hesitate to ask. And another step that I also made, which I didn't show, or I showed too late because I realized it too late, I made a small fold to the front of the pants because that made them fit a bit better, because I have no extra fabric on my ass because it is quite big, and I ended up with extra on the front because I do not have ass on my front side. So I cut off a bit, I made it a fold, I think it was 5 centimeters by 5 centimeters, so I took 10 centimeters out from here. But if you want your pants to be wide, that doesn't matter. So you don't have to do it, but in case you're wondering why your pants don't fit the way you want them to, that is one thing that you can try. When you're pinning your pattern pieces to your fabric, you want to fold it so that this part will not be cut, so that you don't have to make a bigger pattern and cut the whole piece. You can instead fold it and cut it, leaving seam allowance. And after we cut this part out, we are going to cut open the legs. But remember not to cut this part. And after you've cut your pieces, you want to cut the legs open. So measure how long you're going to cut or mark it. And then I have stripes, so it's fairly easy. So I just mark which stripe I'll follow. And always save your pattern pieces, because if the project turns out good and you want to duplicate it with different kind of fabrics or adding different details or something like that, then it's easy to use the pattern that you've already made. And if you want to change something, it's easier to alter an existing pattern than to make a completely new one. There. And now you want to repeat it to the back side of your pants, and after that, if your fabric is prone to fraying, like mine is, you want to go around all the edges with zigzag or an overlocker to prevent the pieces from fraying while we're sewing. Next up, we want to start sewing the pieces together, and we'll start from the crotch. And you want to pin your fabrics together, pretty sides down, but my fabric doesn't have a pretty side, it's identical on both sides, but you want to make the pretty sides face each other. And really be careful when pinning and sewing this. And I also put some extra pins so that when I take these off to sew, that this will really stay together. And when you're sewing it, you want to make small little backups so that the seam is strong, because you do not want your pants to fall apart from the crotch. So after you've pinned it together, start by going up one leg and remember reinforcement stitches and come back down. With the magic of time travel, also known as video editing, I come before you because I have already put my elastic in, but when I tried the pants on, the front looks a bit messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna make a fold. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this is my front middle, and I am going to sew along this line so that I can cut away this part, because right now it has a bit too much fabric, and I'm going to take this in consideration when I make the pattern for you. I'll tell you how to make the pattern, and it would be easier to do this before you put the elastic in, so this is why I put this here before I show you how to put the elastic. But anyway, I am going to sew along this line, and because I now have a good amount of the elastic, I am then going to do some things to this part. But first I'm going to sew this one, and it goes right up to this seam. So I am going to sew this. When you're sewing, be really careful that there is no extra fabric or folds or any kind of ruffling going on, that is just straight fabric. And at this point, before you cut the excess off, you want to take off your pins and check if it's a nice amount that you folded away, or if you need to take away a bit more, or if you have to take this apart and take a bit less. So next step is to try this on. You want to start from the top and sew both seams together. Next, you want to make your tunnels for the elastic, and I'm going to be making 2 tunnels, so I will have to make 2 tunnels that are a bit wider than my elastic each, and I'll leave both of them open. So I will fold my fabric, and note that I have the seam allowance like so. So I will first make 1 tunnel and leave a bit open, and then make another tunnel under it, and then put the elastic through. But first let's make the tunnels. Leave an opening and start the next tunnel. I just used safety pins to push the elastics through, And after you've put them through, you want to sew them together. Make sure that you don't fold them. You want them to go straight all the way so that they don't make any bumps to the waistband, and overlap them a bit and sew over with short and wide zigzag. And really go back and forth so that it holds. Repeat the process. And after that, you want to close your elastic tunnels. After you're done with your elastic, you want to try the pants on and see how long you want them to be. And once you have decided on a length, cut them and be very careful to make both legs the same length so that you don't end up with pants with one leg shorter than the other, because that just looks wonky. So the next thing you want to do is, if you're making bloomers, you can just fold it to make a tunnel and put elastic in so that it gathers up, and that way you don't get wind blowing in and anything like that, because bloomers don't have to be so tidy, or if you want you can do that anyway. But what I'm going to do is, next up I am going to gather and ruffle these up and then sew a small cuff to it. And make sure when you decide how wide you want your cuff to be that it fits around your ankle and your calf, and if you're making shorter shorts, over your knee as well, because that would suck if you make these pants and then you can put them on. Okay, so I already did the other cuff and it looks like this. So now I'm going to do this one. Fold, make small folds at pretty much even spaces. They don't have to be super neat, but because I'm too lazy to ruffle, I'm doing it like this. Because this fabric is too thick for my machine to ruffle it for me, and I am very lazy, so this is what I'm doing. Cut off the excess threads. And I think I can do one more fold. And before you put, or before we go to the next stage, put these on and make sure that they fit nicely, that they're not too loose. If they are, you can ruffle them a bit more, and if you can't fit into them, then it's good to know at this stage. So go ahead and try them on. And the next thing we are going to do take a bit of fabric, make sure that it's long enough to go all the way around. This is actually the part that I cut off from the legs. So next thing you want to do is to sew this on like so. Can you see what I'm doing? Yes, you can. So you want to sew pretty much over here and make sure that you cover up the stitch that we just made. So first you want to sew here and then fold it over and fold it under and then sew from here and here. So around both edges to make it look nice and polished. So that is the next step. I will put the seam on the cuff next to the inseam of the trousers or shorts or whatever these are, so that it is nice and hidden. And again, make sure that you're covering up the stitches that you just made. And then start sewing. Fold it over, check that it covers all the previous stitches, and it does. Okay, so after you're done that, the next thing you want to do is fold it. Okay, so I pinned it and folded the excess fabric to the inside. We can cut away the real excess in a bit, but now you want to gently put it on. Mine is quite snug to the machine, and I am going to start. It doesn't really matter which stitch you do first, this one or this one. I'm gonna start from the top because why not? So here we go. And then do the bottom stitch. And if you wanted to add any lace, now would be the time, but because this fabric isn't quite brown and isn't quite black, it's somewhere in between. I have no idea what color this is, but anyway, I don't have any lace for this because none of it matches the color. But if you wanted to add lace, now would be the time. And do the best you can. This will be a bit hidden under all the excess fabric that we have over here. It will be slightly folded over this one. And this is a bit hard to sew because there is a lot of fabric, because you have the folds and all, ouch, the excess fabric to sew over, so it can be a bit difficult, but do your best. And after that you can fold it, cut away the threads, and now you can cut away this excess fabric and hem it to make sure that nothing gets away. And then repeat the process to the other leg as well. And that was it for today's tutorial, and I'll see you again next Wednesday. Bye!